Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Molly Koshina. I'm the press attaché here at the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines. Thank you for joining us for another edition of U.S. Embassy Insider. As you can see today, we are in the consular section of the U.S. Embassy, and we're here to learn about how to be #visa ready for an immigrant visa. Today, I'm joined by two consular colleagues who are going to help us understand the process by which you apply for a visa, tips and ideas on things to remember, documents, all of the information that you are waiting to know about immigrant visas. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for dropping by.
Yeah,
happy to be here.
It's wonderful, and I know our Facebook fans are really interested in immigrant visas in particular. So we've got a ton of questions to go through.
Great.
So Facebook fans, as you're watching, be sure to enter your comments down below. And also, if you're on Twitter, be sure to tag us at #US Embassy Insider. So let's get to the questions. So start with, what is an immigrant visa?
So very simply, an immigrant visa is permission to travel to the United States with the intention of residing there permanently.
Okay. How does that differ from a tourist visa?
Well, really, it's permanent versus temporary. So an immigrant visa holder intends to move to the United States permanently, whereas a non-immigrant visa holder would go temporarily for school or temporarily for work or just to visit family and friends.
Is there a maximum amount of time you could stay on a tourist visa for visiting family and friends?
It's what they stamp when you enter the U.S., but generally it's about 6 months. Sometimes it could be a little bit different, so pay attention to the stamp.
Okay, very important. So if I want to live in the United States, how do I become eligible for an immigrant visa?
Well, you need to have somebody petition for you, and that's either going to be a relative or an employer. There's lots of different relatives that can petition for you, but mainly it's parents, children, spouses, and employers. We see different types of employers that also petition. We send a lot of nurses from the Philippines to live in the United States permanently. Other relations include a fiance who you intend to marry within 90 days of arriving in the United States. Okay. And there are also adopted parents and step-parents in some situations.
So outside of a job, it's really close family relationships.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, interesting. Now, for the interview, which is a big part of the process, how do I know what to bring?
When it's time for you to start preparing for your visa interview, the NVC, the National Visa Center, will contact you with a checklist of documents that you'll need to provide. Some will have already been provided, and some you'll need to produce currently. So they might be the medical, for example, and then they'll provide the checklist and what you'll need to bring. So use the checklist as your guide. In addition to the National Visa Center, we also have checklists on our website.
Is the National Visa Center here in Manila?
No.
Is it back in the United States?
Yes, we'll be back in the United States.
Okay. And what is an NBI AKA?
Okay. So every applicant age 16 and over is required to have a clearance from the Philippine National Bureau of Investigation. That's the NBI.
Okay.
And so you're required to get one for every name that you have used or that may appear in an official document. So, for example, if your name is John, John, but on your birth certificate it was filled out incorrectly as Jon, we're going to require something called an NBI AKA, also known as, that includes both your John and your Jon name.
Both names?
Yes, ma'am. And that's also the case if your date of birth has been recorded incorrectly somewhere. So let's say on your marriage certificate your date of birth was recorded incorrectly. We're also going to need an NBI that has the date of birth, the incorrect date of birth, as well as your actual date of birth.
So AKA, also known as?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so any variation in that information?
Even if you've never used that name before in your life, it just happens to appear on a document that belongs to you, you are required to bring an NBI AKA.
Wow, that's really interesting. And what do I need to remember when I'm getting that NBI clearance?
Just to remember that any name or any spelling of name or misspelling of a name that may appear on an official document belonging to your person, marriage certificate, birth certificate, death certificate of a spouse, something like that, could be, you would need an NBI AKA for all of those spellings.
So you really have to check things carefully.
Yes.
And you can have multiple NBI AKAs. So if somebody has a first name is misspelled more than once, you might have to submit more than one NBI-AKA.
Wow, never thought about that. So I understand there are applicants that are called conditional spouses. That is the CR1, is that correct? So conditional spouse of a US citizen. Do I need a CENOMAR since I'm already married?
Well, the CENOMAR is a certificate of no marriage, and we have some visa categories where marital status is a requirement for that visa status. So an unmarried son or daughter, for example, would need to be unmarried, and they'd bring their CENOMAR to show that they're not married. However, the CR1 that you mentioned, the conditional spouse, they would want to show they're married because they need to be married for that type of visa. So you'd still apply to this, like the same process, but instead of a CENOMAR, you'd receive an advisory on marriages, which would list your current and any previous marriages.
Interesting.
Yes, and it's important to also remember, just like with the MBI-AKA, if you've used different names or different spellings of the same name, anything that you'd get an MBI-AKA, you'd also want to provide with the CENOMAR or the advisory on marriage document also, so we could check any variations.
So it's really connecting all of the lines for any change in spelling, any change in date or status.
Yeah, and one thing I would also like to add is if your spouse that you are married to lived in the Philippines for any time after they're 18, we'd need to see their advisory on marriage also, just to verify their marital status when the two of you got married.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah,
so there's a lot of homework to do.
Yes, there is. That's why the check sheet's important.
Yeah. So what does it mean if I receive a notification from the embassy that I have an incomplete affidavit of support? Or what if I missed questions on the affidavit of support?
So first of all, if the embassy tells you that you were missing something on your affidavit of support or any document, it's important that you follow the instructions that were given to you at the embassy, because that should tell you specifically what you need to obtain. So an affidavit of support just basically is an affidavit from the petitioner in the United States. Most petitioners are required to provide an affidavit of support that says the petitioner is willing and able to support the immigrant financially in the United States. And so some common issues that we see with affidavits of support are missing signatures or signatures in the wrong places. Sometimes the income is inadequate or there's not proof of the petitioner's income, that they have adequate income and that it belongs to them.
In the affidavit of support, you have to provide the financial information to prove that there is the ability to support, right?
Yes.
Interesting.
And we also have more information about affidavits of support and the documents that are required on our website.
Yeah, that is a complicated topic, so it's good to check the website to make sure you're getting all the rules and requirements.
And the details, sure. And so I've heard that there are people that help others with visas. Are there any accredited travel agencies or are there any organizations that can help me get the documents ready and guarantee that I can get a visa?
No, there's not. We understand that this is a complicated process and there's so many documents and so many things you have to prepare for. And so a lot of people do use travel agents and lawyers to help prepare these documents. However, we want to caution that if somebody is guaranteeing that they can make sure you get your visa, or they're telling you that there's shortcuts you can take that don't fall in line with the check sheet, then this could be a scam situation. And we'd hate for any of our applicants to wind up in that situation. So you're always your best advocate. So.
And I guess I know my information. I know what names have been used. I know which document has the wrong birth date.
Yeah.
So I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, so use the check sheets as your guide. And if you want to use a lawyer or somebody to kind of help make sure get everything in order, that's okay. But if they're guaranteeing something, then that's you probably want to find somebody else to help you out.
Sure. So watch out for any of those guarantee visa scams.
Exactly.
That is something to worry about. So what do you think? What are tips that you have, secrets, any ideas, any advice for our viewers who might be going through the immigration process right now?
Well, I think it's important to note that the interview is generally the last step in the process. So the process begins with your petitioner filing the petition. And some petitions can take decades to process from the time the petition is filed to when you'll come for your interview. Yes, ma'am. So a lot of it begins with your petitioner providing the U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services, USIS, with the correct information to begin with.
Yeah, as interviewers, our goal with the applicants also is to have them come in for the interview and complete all the steps that day. So we'd really want to have people come in and be able to finalize everything right then. So we're not looking to make things prolonged or drag things out, but we are checking to make sure all the documents are complete and we have all the information we need.
I think it's great to try and get everything wrapped up in one day. What happens if someone comes for their interview but they don't have the checklist complete?
So unfortunately, they're given information that they're given the news that we can't approve their visas today and that there's further documents that are required, and they're given instructions about what is required and how to go about getting it. And often that adds a lot of time and effort on the applicant's part that they could have avoided. So one thing that we advise applicants is to, if you have a visa appointment coming up and you don't have all the required documents, go ahead and call our call center and reschedule the interview for a later date.
Yeah, that doesn't look bad on your application.
When it gives time to make sure you've got all the right documents.
Right.
That's really interesting. Any other tips?
Just be honest.
Yeah.
Be yourself. If you're missing a document, or there's something missing on a document, or there's something that you want to tell the consular officer about it, always tell the truth.
I think when people come for interviews, they're very, very nervous.
Yes.
Is that something that you can see when you're interviewing? And do you have any advice for overcoming those nerves, the jitters?
No, a lot of times we do see that people are very nervous. Taking a deep breath and remembering we're here to make sure everything's accurate. We want people that are legally able to go to the United States to be able to go. So we're friendly people and we're human beings also. And we know that's a lot to prepare for.
It is. It's a lot of pieces, but I think being honest and having confidence in the system,
Yes.
that's good advice. Well, thank you so very much for sharing all of this wonderful information with us today. I think our followers are now going to be immigrant #visa ready. And followers, as you have questions for us, type them here on Facebook. Let us know. We'll be sure to follow up with you. We're happy to answer all of your questions. Thank you again for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and I know that our Facebook followers did as well. Appreciate it. Thank you
so much.
Great. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for another U.S. Embassy Insider episode. We'll see you again next month. Be sure to follow at U.S. Embassy Manila on Twitter and Instagram to get updates from the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines.